It's bee time again. We'll take a look as a brand new beekeeper takes the first step by installing nearly 30,000 bees.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to shake some of these bees into that.
And wild or on a farm, we'll take a look at blueberries. 9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. $80 to 90% of the world's crops are pollinated by bees. They are the only insect that produces food eaten by humans, and they're responsible for about 30% of it. If you're thinking about becoming a beekeeper, you're going to need some bees. I was once again back with Bernie the beekeeper for a look at this first step of the process.
So what we're doing today is we're delivering bees. This is kind of the neatest part of beekeeping for me. I get pretty excited about it. New beekeepers get their first packages and install them, and it's pretty exciting stuff. And old beekeepers like myself are excited about introducing new bees into our apiaries, whether it's replacement or just expansion. Most people get packages, and thousands of packages are now flooding across the country, filling beehives. What a package is it's a box like this that's screened, and they shake a frame of bees, they put a cap on, take it into a building. In the building, they take that little cap off. Hang on tight. They have the queen already in a queen, what we call a queen cage. And she's all set to go in here. They slide this in and put a feeder can in. This can has 3 holes in it. It's filled with sugar water. And they drop that in here. And that's good to transport them from California, Florida, or Georgia, the 3 main starting points, up here to the north. But now we're going to go install some bees just on the north side of Iron Mountain. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to install these 3-pound packages here. And as you can see, there's a few bees. There's 9,500 bees per pound. So we got a couple here that are going to be going into the box. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put one in myself, and then I'll talk Rick through his. And so you'll get to see 2 go in. And it'll be kind of neat, him doing his very first one. When you're starting out with bees, it's kind of difficult because you're working with what they call foundation. This is a plastic formed foundation with a light spray of beeswax on it. And they have to then draw that out. In other words, they have to add wax to it that comes out of their abdomen. They take it and chew it and make it nice and soft, and then they build it out until it looks like this. Now this is fully drawn comb, and it's really the best for installation. If you can get a frame or 2 like this, it allows the queen to start laying eggs even quicker. And that's what you want. As quick as you can, you want her to start laying that 2,000 eggs a day. And Northwoods Beekeepers, our club, when we help people, we swap a couple of frames like this for a couple of frames of foundation. These sell for about $10 a piece. Those sell for about $2 or $2.50. So it's a pretty good deal, and it's really neat for the beginning beekeeper.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Race Driven, your source for premier power sports products.
Okay, so what we've done is we've pulled out some frames out of the box to make room for the bees when we dump them in. We're going to take the queen and sandwich her between this frame and that frame, and then we'll set her gently down into a pile of bees, and then replace all the rest of the frames, close everything up, and put some sugar water on. The first thing we have to do is remove the feeder can. We'll take the queen out, who's in this cage. We'll shake her off good. So we're going to take this bottom cork out and put a marshmallow in there, and they'll eat through that marshmallow in a day or so, and they'll release her. And that'll make us sure that she's been acclimated to their hive. And while I'm not working with her, I'm going to put her in my pocket. A cold draft hurt her, so you don't want her to get chilled. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shake some of these bees into that, just the way they went in originally back in California. And this is a pretty easy process. You just literally shake them in. Put this in front of the box. We get the queen out. We pull it out and put your thumb over the bottom. And then we take small marshmallow and we stuff it in there. And they'll eat through that, and then that's releasing her. And what we're going to do is we're going to sandwich her in between these. We're going to take it right like this and actually press down. Whoops, a little more. We're going to press this down right into the foundation there, into the frame. And this one sandwiches. We'll turn this like that so it doesn't fall. And now we've made a sandwich out of this. And you had it screen pointed this way so we don't cut off her airflow. And then we gently put this down in here. Come on, ladies. Come on, you can do it. And we set it down gently. And then we replace all the frames one at a time. And we want her to be center when we're all done, or as close center as we can get. And that's for the heat, especially at this time of year. Now the reason they're so gentle is that they don't have a home to protect yet. As soon as she starts laying eggs, this will be their home. And intrusions may not be so welcomed. This is an Italian race of bees, and they're called gentle on the comb for a reason, because they're pretty easy to get along with. Now in a minute or two, all these bees on the outside, which aren't too many right now, are going to go racing in. Now we're going to feed these with syrup, and they'll come right up through the inner cover and they'll get that syrup. You turn it outside the hive, and you don't want it leaking in there. You can drown your bees. So that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple stuff. Come on, ladies. There you go. And you got to wait for these?
No, but I will.
The queens have pheromones, the bees have pheromones. Brood has it, and they can tell just by the smell whether there's a queen present or not, or brood present or not. She's in there, they can smell her, and they're gonna head right in there. They'll start eating that marshmallows. Usually it's overnight. By tomorrow morning, that thing will be probably eaten out and she'll be on her way. And one more element, you have to go back in to take that box out in about 3 days. There's two reasons for that. One is that it's kind of held those two frames apart a little more than what we call bee space, and they'll put comb in there. And two is you want to make sure she got out and can get out and lay now. They know their own queen. If you were to take now and take her out and put another one in, they would not accept her. They would kill her. They don't like anything foreign in there. If a bee from another hive wants to come into this one, they're going to do battle at the door. They have guard beads sitting out there to make sure nobody's going to intrude. And when they're just starting out, these entrances are really reduced. There's just one little, what we call one bee space, so that they can come and go, because this is all new to them. So you reduce the entrances, and that stops what we call robbing. They'll rob from one hive to another in a heartbeat. And set it on its side.
My wife and I both kind of was interested in the beekeeping aspect of it. We go through a lot of honey, we were buying a lot of it. So we thought, instead of having to purchase it, the best thing would be to have our own honey right here in our own property. And they say the closer to home you get it, the better it is for your health and everything. So we thought we would take a chance and give it a shot and see what type of fun we could have with the bees, and see if it was something that we really liked. The Northwoods Beekeeping Association has been a plus in our back pocket. They've been super about helping us get started. Bernie here has been kind of a special mentor as far as helping anybody new get started. There's several beekeepers right here close by my house that have offered to come over and help me step through every aspect of the beekeeping, so that I didn't have to go into it blind, and kind of made me feel better about taking a chance and not making any mistakes on hurting the bees or myself or anything else. And it's really been a good experience so far, and today's been the first big step in getting them, and we'll see how it's going to go from there. We're really excited about raising them and seeing how it's going to work for us. So.
You'll feel the bees at the bottom. So that's our installation. We did 2 of them and it went real fast. Now Rick, like all beekeepers, or like a lot of beekeepers, are going to be going through his hives every 7 to 9 days. We're going to be inspecting them, making sure that the queen's got a nice laying pattern and that she's doing well. And it also, for beginning beekeepers, this is very important. First of all, they're going to learn a whole bunch. Second, they're going to get used to being around bees. Down the road, we're going to do that mite inspection. That'll probably be our next thing. And then we'll probably do a split and maybe at the same time make a nuke. Both of those elements require a big, strong hive that can support becoming 2 hives or 1.5.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom. So the bees have been busy all summer doing their thing, collecting pollen and making honey.
He's looking for a place to deposit that pollen.
It's time for the beekeeper to take his share of the honey they've made. Before we see how that's done, we'll take a look at a couple of beekeepers' jobs that took place over the last couple of months.
Today we're going to be working on this overwintered hive, which is very strong. And when you have an overwintered hive, you have to do something with them or they're going to swarm. So you can do a split where you take 1 hive and you turn it into 2, or you can do like what we're going to do today. We're going to take it and make a nuke. Nuke is short for nucleus. It's a beginning. It's a 5-frame box of bees, and I will be buying a queen to go in that one. Somewhere in here is going to be all the brood, but also the queen could be in there, and if we just dug right in, we run the chance of what they call rolling her, and you would actually kill her by pulling her out. So we're going to take out a couple, or 1 frame at least from the end. You check it over for the queen, and she ain't here. So we're going to move on and see where the brood is. This one has honey, but no brood. They bring the pollen in, and then they pack it in these cells. And then generally what it'll be in like in an arch, and this will be for brood. Brood meaning the baby bees. And then they mix the pollen with honey, and that makes bee bread. And that's for baby bees. The adult bees only eat honey, and queens only eat royal jelly. This is sealed honey, it's capped. And that means it's down to 16% humidity, and this up in here is kind of what you'd probably call green honey. They know when it gets to 16%, it starts out at about 70 or 80%. And they'll start fanning, and they fan through the hive. And when the honey gets dried enough, then it's sealed off and it won't ferment. Otherwise, it'll ferment. This is a nice one too. And there's a lot here getting ready to seal. You can see some of them are partially sealed, which means they're really close.
An older queen is bigger and a larger abdomen. Young queens are harder to spot. They're not much bigger than a worker.
There she is right there. See her?
I usually go through and I start looking for her eggs, because that means she's real close to that area. And I kind of scan over the frame, and she kind of looks like a spider walking around to me, not like a 6-legged bee.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pull out 2 frames out of the nuke. This one is just a beautiful pattern on here, and that's what I want. We'll get another one like that. And there's another one, look at that. It's almost solid bees, or brood.
Yeah, it's capped brood.
Oh, that's beautiful. She's on here. Okay, so I gotta be there. This hive is ready for transportation. The entrance is sealed with screens so that they can't come out. We'll tighten down the strap on the top, and we can take it over to our home yard, and I don't have to worry about them filling the car and enjoying the ride. So I'll leave this sealed for 24 hours, otherwise they'll come boiling out and they'll get lost. And then they reorientate themselves. You see them doing circles up here. This is the easy part right here. Set it up here. These are my skunk guards. Skunks love bees.
Another task of the beekeeper is to check for mites by what's known as a sugar roll.
What we're looking for to do a mite count, a sugar roll mite count, is we're looking for frames of brood. The mites hang out on the nurse bees that are caring for the brood, waiting to jump into a cell that is about to be capped, because that's where they reproduce, inside a capped cell of bees. So I'm trying to get a half cup of bees, and one way to do it is just to run a jar down a frame of bees and put a cover on them. I'll put about 2 tablespoons of sugar on the top, regular old powdered sugar. Then I'm going to shake and roll the bees for a minute. The powdered sugar and the heat of this half cup of bees being together is going to dislodge the mites from the bee's body. Now we actually set this aside for 3 to 5 minutes. Now we start shaking them out, and because I've got this number 8 hardware cloth in here, the mites will fall through and the bees will stay in my jar. At different times of year, a higher level of mites is acceptable. Here we are early in the spring buildup season, and we only want a 1% infestation or less of mites. I'll spray a little water. Here's 1 mite, 2 mites. So a sample of half a cup of bees is a sample of 300 bees. So I've got 2 mites in 300 bees, which means it's less than 1% mite infestation for this hive. So it's doing well. In the early 80s, the beekeeping community realized that the Varroa mite had made a successful leap over to the Western honeybee from its native Asian honeybee. And it's been so successful that now across the United States, you don't have to wonder if you've got mites in your hive. We just assume that we all have mites in our hive to deal with. Our job is actually to manage the mite load, not try to eradicate them totally. So we try to keep the mites all year long below a 3% infestation. Besides being parasites on the bee body, they also lower the bee's immunity, and they bring with them dozens of viruses that infect the bees. For hives that aren't managed to keep mite loads low, there's literally 100% certainty that your hive will die within 1 to 3 years. So we need to manage our mites in order to have healthy bees long term. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mites. At this time of year, we're looking for just a 1% infestation. So Bernie, you're going to have to treat your bees.
I had planned on it anyways.
All right. Bye, girls.
Blueberry picking is a great summertime tradition here in the UP. You can pick them wild or pick them at a farm. About all you need is a bucket and some bug spray.
So it's July, it's midsummer here in the Northwoods, and that means a couple different things. First and foremost, that means that it is berry season. Blueberries and service berries kind of kick it all off. And we're gonna go today and see if we can find some wild blueberries. There are a few trees that blueberries really seem to like to grow around. First of all, blueberries like barrens or soils that are rocky and almost nutrient deficient. They like a lot of rocks and moss and lichen and things like that. But in particular, they do work well with trees. When we look at the blueberry plant itself, you can see it has leaves that grow not opposite of each other, as in there would be 2 right here. So they're staggered all the way up. When we look at them, a lot of times these blueberries come in a nice little cluster, 2, 3, 4, etc. So I just pick a whole cluster right in. And then I'm trying to leave as much of the green berries on the plant as possible because wildlife does love them. So there's basically 2 different kinds of blueberries across the globe. When we think of blueberries that you picks, etc., those are called high bush. And there's different species within that realm, but basically they grow tall, very tall. Not too uncommon to see them be bigger than you, taller than you. And there's low bush berries, and that's the wild blueberries. Low bush, call that because they're low, and they put off runners, which is a piece of the plant that goes, and then it forms a foothold, and then from there it continues to spread. Pretty important. We make sure we're getting the right thing. Now, blueberries can darken with age. Now, this particular berry is not a blueberry. Peel it off and you're gonna see right away it has a hard woody pit. Blueberries do not have a pit. They have fine, tiny seeds. When we look at the plant structure, you can see two totally different plants going on here. This plant has much bigger leaves and much bigger, broader forking in the plant structure. Blueberries, more compact in nature for the plant. The leaves are gonna be this blue-green early in the year, then turning to green, and then late in the year they'll turn purple. The blueberry blossoms are white in the spring, and they're heavenly smelling, and they're literally everywhere.
You can search for blueberries in rocky or sandy areas, or you can just look for a sign.
So we all know that blueberries are grown commercially down in lower Michigan on the western side of the state, and the person that was the grandfather of commercial blueberry farming in Michigan was a professor of horticulture at Michigan State University. His name is Stanley Johnston. So he had this idea that blueberries could also grow in northern climates if they developed the right varieties. It takes quite a while to grow blueberry bushes, especially up here in the north. We have a few small plants that we've planted, and they're knee high, and they're probably 10 years old, you know, and they don't produce enough to get a pie, unlike these big ones. These are pretty spectacular, and on opening day, these bushes were just hanging because of the weight of the berries, and roughly half of the crop has been taken off, so things have lightened up quite a bit. The conditions, I think, for a really good year are during pollination time. So you want to have good conditions during pollination to get as many of those blossoms pollinated as possible. And then warm, they tend to like warm, so an early spring is good. Blueberry bush roots don't have many root hairs, and so they need sort of frequent rains. We have 3,500 bushes. They're 50 years old, plus or minus. There's a lot of varieties. These varieties tend to get ripe starting early to mid-August, depending on the year, and continue. We can have picking on a good year like this all the way till freeze up. And so we have some varieties that don't ripen until early October, and we often don't get those because they'll freeze up before they're ready.